You're listening to Head Voice, bringing you inside the minds of the best in contemporary acapella. I'm Evan, and this week we are kicking off a month of awesome guests with Melinda Packer from Sharp Attitude. She co-founded the group in 2011. She was their vocal percussionist, and she's also an awesome beatboxer. She's an educator and teaches and workshops vocal percussionists around the country. We talked about some of her influences. She gave us some examples of how she developed sounds, amongst other things, and some common mistakes that vocal percussionists in a cappella can make. During the episode, Melinda talked about some various VPs and beatboxers that she looks up to, amongst other things. So in the show notes, if you're on SoundCloud, hit show more. If you're on the podcast app, just tap the album art and it'll show up. It provides any references that we may have made during the episode that we didn't explicitly talk about. That's for all the episodes now. In case there's anything that you missed, it should be in the show notes. As always, thank you for the support. If you can throw us a like on Facebook, review on iTunes, it helps us a lot. And without any further ado, this week's episode of Head Voice.
Hey everyone, we're here with Melinda Packer and we're stoked to have her here. I'm just going to turn it right over to you, Melinda, and would you mind just giving us a little introduction into your musical background and how you got into a cappella?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I would say I'm a violist and vocal percussionist. And I'm really involved in both of those things. But specifically in terms of a cappella and beatboxing, I wasn't lucky enough to have a cappella in my high school. But I did start beatboxing when I was in high school. And I actually started when I was in marching band. I was in the brass line and I was on the field just kind of waiting for my next instruction. And I heard this tuba player beatboxing, just kind of passing the time. And I had never heard anything like that before. I was like a sophomore in high school. And I thought it was really, really cool. So I ran up to him and I asked him to just kind of, teach me what he was doing. I had never heard anything really like that before. So he just kind of taught me a couple sounds, and then I just went home, searched on YouTube for all the beatboxing videos that I could, and just kind of practiced. And then not until I got to college did I discover a cappella, and just kind of a whole new world opened up to me. And then I just kind of ran with it all throughout college.
Awesome. So you've been saying the word beatboxing a lot. So I'm just curious. I know this is something that I don't know too much about, but could you just clarify the difference between vocal perk and beatbox? Because I know I personally use them interchangeably, and I don't know if that's...
Yeah.
I don't really know exactly the details that separate the two, per se.
Well, I have been confusing already. I should be more specific. So I actually get this question all the time because I do a lot of teaching. I probably teach just as much as I perform, if not honestly more lately. So when I do beginning workshops, I basically boil it down to the difference between being an ensemble member and a solo artist. But because they use the same general beatboxing and vocal percussion, since they use the same general toolkit of sounds, I call them mouth drumming. So I really should say I'm a mouth drummer that performs in a cappella contexts as well as solo contexts, meaning that sometimes I'm a beatboxer, sometimes I'm a vocal percussionist. So when I'm doing a beatboxing thing, since I'm not performing as part of an ensemble, I don't have to worry about tempo or feel or anything else. I can kind of just do my own thing, and I can use more pitched sounds, and I can use more sounds that are kind of like flashy and things you wouldn't really use in an a cappella setting. So things are sort of technically dialed back in terms of variety of sounds in an a cappella setting, but I think you just have to be a lot more creative and artful in order to kind of provide a beat and a feel and sometimes make yourself known, but you don't really want to show off. So it's really I think it's just saying it's like being a member of an ensemble versus being a solo artist, I think kind of sums it up nicely. There's a lot of crossover, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good definition of things. For you, we've got the pleasure to watch you perform a few times with Sharp over the years, and I think that there's been a few notable moments in Sharp's set where you're definitely featured doing kind of some more dubsteppy, like, you know, kind of intense breakdown stuff. And so I guess the question that I'm trying to get at is, I feel like as a mouth drummer myself, that the lines between vocal perk and beatboxing, not in terms of role but in terms of technique and sounds, are increasingly getting a little bit blurred as you know, kind of beatboxers join a cappella groups and a cappella groups want to sound more electronic or whatever it is. So could you just speak to that that evolution and how things have changed and how you view the differences and the similarities there?
Yeah, totally. That's definitely a thing. I mean, fortunate for me, Sharp Attitude kind of gives me some moments to like have a little fun, you know, though in our ICCA set, you know, I had a couple moments, and like in our boss set. So I get like little things here and there, which is really fun. And a lot of other groups do that. And I think it's really cool and really effective. And, you know, sometimes they take it to an even further level. Like I'm thinking like Lucas and Faux Paz, you know, he had like Where Are You Now was like about him, which is so cool and so unheard of. But he's got all of these amazing, like low dubsteppy kind of sounds that I cannot do at all. But I think, yeah, you're totally right. I think as, you know, music progresses and music technology progresses, and, you know, EDM and that whole scene and that type of music becomes more and more popular, you know, like even slow ballads are being remixed into EDM songs on the radio. Like it doesn't end. So people who make these mouth drummy kind of sounds have to learn how to adapt, because a lot of these a cappella groups are starting to do these electronically influenced songs. So personally, as a beatboxer, mouth drummer, vocal percussionist, whatever, I really, really like the old school style. Like I love late 80s, early 90s beatboxing and hip hop. My ear kind of gravitates to that style, like old school hip hop and rap, as opposed to more current things. And beatboxers back then were doing a lot kind of more simple, heavy beats that weren't so quick and intricate and didn't have all these dubsteppy sounds. So it's been a big challenge for me personally to try and learn all of these new sounds and to like access this new genre of music that I don't really listen to. I don't really listen to EDM. I'll admit it. I don't know. I like some stuff that I hear, but I just don't listen to it that much. So it's harder for me. But it's kind of made me want to listen to it more and grow an appreciation for all of these synthesized sounds because I've had to be exposed to it, you know, through a cappella. So.
Because you are hearing all this new electronic music, do you try to develop new sounds that aren't maybe from the 80s or 90s and like the things that you typically like to do? And when you're trying to develop these new sounds, how do you go about doing that? Because they're so electronic and so computer made. Almost. Yeah, totally. Like, yeah, I mean, I do naturally gravitate towards acoustic sounds, but I mean, one way that I'll do it is, you know, just trying to just like mess around, you know, make crazy sounds when I'm in the car. I'll try and flip on the radio. I don't listen to the radio that much, but I've been trying to more and more so I can like hear what's actually going on in like current society rather than the music I listen to is like all 100 years old at least. So I'll do that. But then another way is just to watch beatboxing videos. Like there are so many battle videos of beatboxing championships on YouTube. And there are so many beatboxers out there. I follow, like my Instagram and Snapchat are full of beatboxers. So it's just really a lot from watching other people, you know, who can do all of these sounds better than me and have more sounds. So some of that, and I also just kind of started taking some beatboxing lessons with a world champion beatboxer, Kenny Urban, who is that's awesome.
Insanely good. So I'm trying to, you know, kind of get some more ideas from him and his whole crew. I follow them on, you know, all of their things, and they have crazy sounds. So it's a lot of kind of just like soaking in things.
If this is kind of, you can say no, but if you'd oblige me, is there any chance that you could show or demonstrate just like a few things that you've been working on in like the past year that like you're excited by in terms of new techniques or whatever? It's okay if you don't want.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're new to me. Probably not new to like the world, but new to me is this kind of like clap. I call it clap snare. It's like a trap snare, clap snare kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I've been working on that a lot lately. It's like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So let me see if I can get it. Like that, like kind of sound. That's tricky for me. This zipper sound I've been working on a lot. So like little tricks and things like that, and always trying to work on my the accuracy of my pitch when I do kind of this polyphonic technique. This trying to get the buzz and the hum to match, or if I want them to not match, trying to tune those perfect intervals. It's really hard. So not super new sounds in the world, but new to me.
What I find interesting, I feel like for your background, is that, you know, you kind of come from this instrumental upbringing, you play all these different instruments and everything, and at least when I'll watch, you know, beatbox battles or whatever on YouTube, a lot of these people doing beatboxing are like, that's their one way that they do music, that they connect through it. Like they either started doing beatboxing or, you know, whatever, they saw a video and they did that. So for you, like, how do you integrate your musical experience into beatboxing in terms of doing melodic stuff, or, you know, what you were just mentioning and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is really tricky just time-wise, and just I kind of always struggle with priorities and time with music. You know, I kind of grew up playing a lot of different instruments, and I had to come to a point where I knew that I wanted to do music in college and I wanted to make it a career and I wanted to teach, but I had to pick an instrument. And that was a hard thing for me. You know, I almost picked saxophone, but I ended up with viola. So throughout the years, you know, since I've been focusing on viola and I've been beatboxing and trying to keep up with these other things, it's been really tricky to figure out how much time I want to like devote to each thing. So as a result, I don't practice beatboxing as much as I would like to. And I want to start doing that more now that I'm out of school. But I mean, I think while I'm beatboxing, I definitely, you know, come into it with, you know, rhythmic skills. I can read music and, you know, a variety of clefs. Not that you need that for beatboxing, but like I have this like toolkit of musical skills. So if someone writes out, you know, if someone gives me a chart in drum notation, I could read that. So I think that gives me a little bit of a leg up in terms of just like being musical, coming up with grooves, and just because I kind of like understand music. But it doesn't give me a leg up that much. You know, I still have to, it only gets me so far. But I mean, I think I kind of approach things maybe differently than a beatboxer who just went right to beatboxing. So yeah, I think so. Just the way I approach rhythm, and also the, you know, the kinds of music, you know, you listen to, of course, influences everything.
Totally. And in terms of who you listen to, for you, are there any big influences on the vocal perk and or beatboxing side that you kind of look to and have modeled your style off of?
Oh yeah, so many. Well, I mean, I did listen to Rockappella, of course, like in middle school and high school. So Jeff Thatcher, huge influence. You know, I like tried to memorize his solo in Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. Like always trying to work on that. It's so awesome. His style is crazy. But yeah, I mean, him, Richard Steighner from The Exchange, amazing vocal percussionist. I mean, there are so many great a cappella mouth drummers out there, but just in terms of beatboxing itself, I'm really influenced by Butterscotch, Bellatrix, Kaila, Mullady, you know, some really like awesome, badass female beatboxers out there who are ridiculous. Especially Butterscotch is a huge influence in terms of just like stringing music with her beatbox. But yeah, there are so many. There's just there's so many different, like, everyone has their own way of doing things, so there's like no lack of inspiration, really.
I'm sure you've picked up a ton from all these influencers, but now I'm just curious to see, because you are in education and that's something that you want to do as a career, what have you learned from these influencers that you apply to your own teaching skills and your own method when you're trying to teach people how to do vocal perk?
Well, I think really the biggest thing is confidence. It doesn't really have to do with music specifically or any specific skill, but I think the biggest thing I get from all of these people that I watch and try and emulate is just confidence. So confidence is a big thing, but I usually start my workshops by saying something like, the three or four like main principles that you really need to think about when you're beatboxing are power, clarity, and confidence. So I say, if you're powerful in your sounds are clear, and you're presenting them in a confident way, you're a successful mouth drummer. So I kind of try and use those three words to dictate my mouth drumming and beatboxing, but like really everything I do in life. I think that's just like good advice in general. So whenever I'm teaching, I need to embody those things, especially because teaching is such a performative thing. You need to be really confident in what you're doing. And if I can embody all of those things myself, I feel like I can impart those to whoever I'm teaching.
If you were to take a run-of-the-mill VP from the acapella world, it could be me, it could be whoever else. Like, what would you say, or like, what is the most common thing that you see that could be easily improved from just, from a technique standpoint?
A couple things. I mean, a lot of times I watch a lot of acapella and listen to a lot of acapella, of course. I think mic technique is a huge thing. Like, if you're gonna use a mic, use it to your advantage. I see a lot of people kind of holding the mic out to the side. That does very, very little for your sound. So mic technique is a big thing. And I always bring a mic with me to whatever workshop I'm doing. I'm going to kind of have like a portable setup, and I make sure that I'm explaining, what kind of microphone I'm using. I just use like a Shure, standard SM58. Which is what you're going to find mostly in acapella context. So I just kind of explain that. And also, I guess, so mic technique is one thing, but also just structuring sounds. Sometimes structuring grooves. I'll hear a lot of acapella groups where the perk is just too busy a lot of the time. I think if you're doing things that are really simple, but you're doing them extremely well, to me, that is far more impressive than doing, if you're just doing like a for the whole song with like a very well placed fill here or there, and I'm not noticing you, and I'm like bobbing along to the music, like, you're killing it, you're doing a great job. But I don't see that as often as I think I could. I think a lot of people think that they need to fill the space a lot, and perhaps forget that in music, it's just space and sound, silence and sound are equally important. You don't need more of one than the other. So I think people are sometimes afraid to leave space in their beats and kind of let the music have a little bit more room. Because there's so much going on, there's all these people singing around you, you don't want to take away from that. So yeah, I think those are like the two big things that I kind of generally see.
Yeah, and going off that too, I wish, as somebody who came from instrumental, but I feel like for anybody, I wish I'd heard when I'd started perking in a group, like, you need, like, treat it like you would another instrument in terms of, like, practice with a metronome. Like,
totally.
Like the feel and the groove is like, how many acapella shows have you been to where a group just speeds through this Ariana Grande song and you like never have a second to enjoy it, or it's just wavering all over the place. So that's something I wish that I had thought about, because I know I personally did that time and time again. So
tempo is huge. Like when I'm teaching, I do an exercise where I do a couple things. One, as I'm teaching the sounds, I'll do some echo practice, which is something that I copied from Alem, like amazing French world champion. Yeah. He's insane. But he has these videos with the metronome where he's like yelling at you in French with the metronome in front of the screen, and he's like, okay, like and you have to repeat it back. So I'll do that in my workshops. But I'll also put a metronome on, have them do a simple beat, and then turn the metronome off, and then turn it back on. And like doing that to the radio is a huge thing. I think if people practice that more, there'd be far more consistency. So yeah, tempo is huge.
So in your opinion, what sort of trends do you see happening in vocal perk that are advancing a cappella and pushing it forward?
I think, well, like we were talking about, I think just more like electronic sounds, more pitched sounds. My friend Craig, the beatboxer for the Hexachords, has done some really, really awesome things on their album, especially because, and I think it's a really good study in how VP can work in a small group, because there's only 6 of them, which is usually half the size of when they were a collegiate a cappella group in that setting. So far smaller, but he does a lot of cool things with pitch. Like he'll do some buzzing and humming even sometimes. So I think that kind of adds a whole new texture to their group. It's kind of like adding another voice with the beat. So I think that's one thing that's can definitely push a cappella forward and be like a really cool thing. And just incorporating extended techniques in a productive way. I think people are doing more and more, but I really think EDM is the biggest thing. All of those sounds, all these new synthesized, computerized sounds, are really, changing the genre, because as groups start to do more and more of this electronic music, they have to kind of figure out how are we going to replicate all of these sounds with the human voice, so.
Right. So also, and then something that you alluded to earlier was how a lot of people don't exactly know how to hold a mic properly, and aren't singing into it correct or doing their percussion into it correctly.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, sometimes you're in a venue where you're off mic. So in that sort of circumstance, how do you have to adjust your technique so that it fits the venue?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I didn't use a microphone for a long time. Sharp Attitude started as like a pretty casual group for the first few years that I was in school and we were in existence. So we didn't really use mics for a couple years. So which I think was really, really good for me, because I had to learn how to project. And because of that, I can be very, very loud if I need to be. And that's really just like sheer muscle power. Like I've built up my bass where you could hear me if we're in an auditorium if I want you to, but I can also dial it back. So when I pick up a microphone, I have to mentally think like I need to dial back. Whereas I've met some beatboxers that have only ever really used mics, and when they're off mic, they're very quiet, and their sounds are very different sounding than mine, because I'm so used to being off mic. So I have to kind of like do this mental switch. But it's just really more air, and it's breath control and management, like, just being really creative with how you use that air, because you're going to get out of breath more easily. Your mouth is going to get drier if you don't have the aid of a microphone and amplification. So I'll drink, like when we would do unmiked shows and I was the only beatboxer doing 12 songs, I would literally drink like a gallon of water, and like take a huge swig in between every song. And it would still be exhausting because I would have to, power over 12 singers. Yeah. But I mean, it's just like a different training, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, speaking of Sharp, you guys, I believe last year you took on an extra VP, right?
Yeah.
Parley?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess I've seen that just a few times in collegiate a cappella, with Nor'easters, the same that year that they were on Sing It On, etc.
Yeah.
And for you guys, so how do you navigate that musically in terms of either switching off or going at the same time?
Yeah, it's really tricky. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely not an easy thing, but it's been such a great learning experience for both of us. I think, well, there's a few different things. When you have two beatboxers that are like, the originals also had two, also I think a couple years ago, 2 years ago maybe, or last year, but I think they weren't so much like in training. The Nor'easters were, Arun was in training, but I think if you're at the same level two beatboxers at the same level is going to be, of course, very different than one person training the other person. So you have more variety when there's two people at the same level. But with Parley, she has some foundational skills, but definitely at more of a beginner level than I was because I've been doing it for so long. So really, I kind of approached it by just splitting up the kit. So I would also work with her like every week on drilling sounds, echo practicing, all that stuff. I would give her assignments, to come up with beats, things like that. So while she was doing that, as the year went on and we were working together and she was practicing, things kind of switched the other way. But it started where I would take all the like kicks and snares and she would take all the hi-hat sounds. Because, the hi-hat group of sounds are definitely easier to project with and just kind of get a handle on at first. Right. Everyone can do it, but I think everyone can do it. But yeah, so we would kind of just split it up that way. Like she would have lots of and I would have everything else. And we would just kind of structure songs like that. And there would be a lot of time in songs where she wouldn't be doing anything and then come in with like a well-timed crash or something like that. So it's definitely more sparse of a role for the person in training. But as the year went on, it gave her more and more opportunities to flip into my role. So at our final concert, only a few of the songs were performed with me kind of being the lead, and then it switched for the greater part of the performance, and she was doing the lead role, and I was sitting out for a good chunk of the song and just kind of coming in with supplementary things because I thought that was really important to have a full year of her in training, because since I've been the only VP ever in Sharp Attitude, and so amazingly we've just kind of over the past few years gotten this recognition and people are starting to know who we are, which is like beyond anything I could imagine. I don't want the level to like drop off, because people will notice that if Sharp Attitude suddenly doesn't have a beatboxer or has someone who's just doing very base level things. So I wanted to bring her up as far as I could. And I'm really confident in her. I think she's going to do a great job next year. She's not me. We have different styles, but she's also a very musical person. So I think she's going to do a lot with the group. And I'm just excited to see what she does with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And like something that I thought of while you're talking about that is, I think when I was in Trebs, we did like there's a few songs where our friend Toria did like kind of that hi-hat crashy role, and that was beautiful because I feel like as a VP you're kind of always trying to choose between the kick and a crash at the beginning of a section, and like having them both at the same time is so helpful. For the uninitiated, like a kick being like and like a crash being like the kind of thing. So, but generally I think you'll have just one VP in a group. So what would you recommend? Because I know that was something I could never choose between whether I wanted that nice bassy thing at the beginning of a section or that higher frequency crash. Like what would be your standard way to go for that?
That's a tough question. I think it really depends on the song, but I think sometimes you really need that crash there. Like if you're going into this like big chorus moment and things are opening up and there's like a p and a psh at the same time, you're going to want the psh, kind of moment, which you can get, you could do all that really cool stuff with two people, but I would probably err more on the side of the higher frequency sounds because you probably have the lower frequency things going on anyway. At the same time, like there's someone doing bass probably, so that's probably like if you have to make a choice, I would probably go with the higher frequency thing.
Very cool.
Awesome. So we're nearing the end of our session today. So two questions we like to ask all our guests are, what's next on the agenda for you? And I know I kind of asked this earlier, but what trends do you see? I guess instead of vocal perks specifically, what sort of a cappella trends do you see on a whole that you're looking forward to or really like that they're moving a cappella forward?
I would love to see a cappella do more different genres. I think a lot of groups get stuck in the whole like pop realm. And I'm sure, I know Archie talked about Carnatic when she was talking with you guys, which is a really awesome thing that she's brought to the group, and other groups kind of have, similar influences, from different cultures of people in the group. So I think that's something that can really, really enhance a cappella. So just more mixing of cultures, different music from different cultures all over the world, things from different genres. I love hip hop. And I don't think hip hop is done that well in a cappella in general, and you don't see that much of it. So I think it would be really, really cool, like if an Urban Method-esque group popped up. Like I was all about them, like they did it right. I thought they were great. So yeah, just really like less poppy kind of stuff and more mixing of things, I think I would love to see. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be driving across the country from Massachusetts to California. I got this really awesome job as a high school orchestra director in kind of the greater Bay Area. I'll be in charge of two orchestras, a concert band, and teaching elementary strings. So I'm really excited. I've done a lot of teaching over the years, but I've never had my own classroom. So this will be officially my first year as a public school teacher, which is terrifying, but exciting. So I'm looking forward to that, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like from this half hour of conversation, I feel like you'll kill it.
Thank you.
Are you going to continue to do VP workshops and stuff like that?
Yes, I would love to. I was lucky enough to be able to present at 2 CASA festivals, an AEA festival, and a NAFME conference this year.
Very cool.
And I have that goal for next year. I want to do at least one of each. I hope to be, at Laugh, Boss, and SoJam if I can make all of them. Nice. But yeah, I'm really excited to kind of check out what's going on in the Bay Area in terms of a cappella. I would love to find find a group. So I don't know if anyone's listening, you need a beatboxer.
So if people wanted to get in touch with you to set up a workshop or to have you be in their group, how would they do that?
Please get in touch with me. You can do that on Facebook. I have just my regular page. I also have a musician page on Facebook where I kind of like post all of my musical things. I have a website that you should look at because very few people do. It's melindapacker.com. Snatch that domain up. And my email is melindapacker@gmail.com. So pretty much my name anywhere you can find me.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And we will link those in the show notes too if you're interested. Thank you, Melinda, for coming on this week.
Thank you.
It was really nice to talk with you. And we hope you'll join us next week for a new episode of Head Voice.
Oh, man, I'm tired of singing.